Hello, and welcome to this Burr edition of the Purple Journal podcast. I am your host, frozen host, Joe Johnson.
That just a Chicago way to say Bears, Burr?
It's close.
Oh, okay.
Dicka.
It's really hard for them to say vowels.
Just want to make sure I'm on the right podcast, not a Burr's podcast. So.
Well, we'll see what happens next week. I'm your host, Joe Johnson, owner of purplePTSD.com and VikingsTerritory.com, here with Mr. Joe Oberly of purplePTSD.com and the Sports Post. Did you make it over to, speaking of Burr, did you make it over to Winter Park today?
I did. It was cold. Imagine that. Yes, I was over there, and there was a lot of people there. I was telling you guys earlier, they gave Adam Thielen the First Stringer Good Guy Award today for cooperating with the media, which implies that other people don't. So.
I thought it was like a Chad Greenway sort of humanitarian good guy award, but it's a media award for people that are nice to the media.
Yeah, the local beat writers vote on who's the most cooperative, the most accessible, and they also have to have something to say. And Captain Munnerlyn won it the last 2 years. He's the first time anybody has ever won it 2 years in a row. And now he's gone. He was going to go for the triumvirate, but Adam Thielen got it, and Everson Griffin is bitter because he was always accessible too. So he came in second.
Is there a physical award like?
There's a little plaque.
Okay.
Corey Stringer was apparently just a great dude in the locker room in the media 11s, and then he passed away. So they named this award for him. So
that's pretty cool. Who would you, if you can opt out of this question, but if there was somebody who would win the opposite of the Corey Stringer Good Guy Award?
No, I need you to answer that question.
Who would it be?
What did you say, Luke?
I need you to answer that question. You cannot not answer that question.
It's so interesting for us because we don't have that access, so it's like we should really talk about it more on the show just because it's like, especially for me, 33 that still looks up to these guys as some sort of demigod type situation. It's just really cool that you have access to them on a personal level.
There's a couple that jump to mind, and probably the king of it is Andrew Sendejo. He has he lets you know that he has no interest in chatting with you, and most people leave him alone because he will then give the most banal, uninterested answers, and the media all knows it, so they generally stay away. He's been playing well this year, so I've seen more and more people venturing a query with him, but generally it's just, you're not going to get anything, so you don't bug him. And Trey Waynes, hates it like from day one. He has come in and has been so uncomfortable with it, I think, that you don't want to put him in that position. And therefore, I think he's succeeded in whatever his modus operandi is because he doesn't get asked a lot of questions because he tries to avoid it. I actually saw him in the locker room today, which you don't usually see him because he knows how to hide. But I just don't think he likes it. And
my theory from completely being far away from the whole thing is that I've always thought that Trey Waynes was just terrified of being in Zimmer's doghouse, and maybe he's just afraid of giving the wrong answer or giving out too much information or something. So
I think if he figures he gets too close to the media, that someone might throw a flag or something.
Yeah, I had a press pass for the first time this year for training camp, and I went down there only for the Saturday scrimmage, and we got to go to the press conference that Zimmer had before that, and I don't know, it's super intimidating. I didn't have the nerve to. I kept telling myself that I'll just feel it out for this year, and then next year I'll ask questions, but that was just a complete excuse because I was too afraid to ask a stupid question.
Well, the other thing is too, and the way I felt it when I first started doing it, I felt the same way, Joe, and the reason being is a lot of these guys have certain questions they want to get in, and you only have so much time, and you don't want to, if you're just asking a question to ask a question, you don't want to take away time from another beat writer who's got on deadline, and needs to do it. But
yeah, I also felt like not
ultimately,
being there the whole time that I didn't want to ask a question that someone had asked Zimmer previously. That was just stupid in that way.
You're going to get shamed by even the guy that you're asking the question sometimes if you do that. If they're feeling frisky, but
I think somebody asked for Zimmer's press conference. They started out by asking what the most important thing a kicker can do is, or something like that. And Zimmer looked at him and said, "Kick." He gave like one answer, and everybody just started laughing. And the guy felt so stupid that I was like, "Man, I don't want to be that guy."
That's a really dumb. He deserved that.
Yeah, he really did. I don't know who he was, but that was the blogger day, so I assume it was one of the fellow quote-unquote bloggers that I was lumped in with that asked that question.
Speaking of asking a question that someone already has, a few years ago when Jared Allen was still on the team, I might even have told the story before, but it's classic, and we're all around him in a scrum, and Sid is standing between me and Allen, and he's right next to Jared Allen, who's answering this question. He gets done with it, and Sid immediately asks the same question again. And Jared Allen turns to him and starts tapping on his ear, his hearing aid. He goes, "Is this thing working, Sid? Is this thing working?" He's actually hitting it. And I was, oh my God. So, yeah. So you can't be worse than Sid if you do that, but whatever.
Well, that's quite the bar to...
Don't forget to not introduce Lucas Braun.
Of course.
I was waiting my turn.
I get goosebumps. I don't know if people know this or not, but we have a very volatile relationship off air.
Wow.
And I'm super.
Yeah, we're not on speaking
intimidated.
terms really outside of this podcast.
Luke writes for Purple PTSD. He also writes hateful texts at 2-3 in the morning whenever bar closes in LA to me. And he is on the Pocket Protectors podcast.
Yes, we skipped this week.
You skipped it?
Yeah, too much family obligation. Everybody's home for the holidays. We figured we'd pack it in.
And you guys record on Tuesdays too, which probably didn't help.
Right?
Yeah, Tuesdays. Well, luckily for our listeners, I have no family obligations, so we're recording this week. What a week, though, man! We had the completely, drama-free game between the Vikings and the Packers. One of the more boring games in the history of those two teams.
The least emotional Vikings-Packers December game in recent memory.
Absolutely was.
I wanted to get your guys' take on something. I'm not the biggest fan of Jim Souhan of the Star Tribune, and he wrote this week that not having Rodgers play was kind of a disservice to the NFL as a whole, but especially in terms of the Vikings-Packers game, just because there was no, there wouldn't have been, it didn't matter, quote-unquote, but we were robbed of seeing one of the all-time great quarterbacks play and robbed of an entertaining Vikings-Packers game, I guess, was his take before the game. This was before they even kind of turned out to be distinctive.
I think we've seen Rodgers plenty.
Thank you. Okay, I wasn't sure if you guys were kind of on that beat.
I'm currently scratching Jim Souhan off the list of people that we're going to get on this podcast. No, I saw that and I thought, Jim's a great guy, just for saying it. But I thought that was a little bit of a search for a topic to write about. I would have liked to have seen him play for the competitiveness, so that the Vikings would have to keep testing themselves as they move toward the playoffs. And
I think you posed that question, Joe.
Yeah.
Not in that way, too. I think you also said, wouldn't it be nice to beat Rodgers and say that we did, so Packers fans can't say that we didn't face him, I think.
Absolutely. But,
we don't have anything to prove. We beat, every other team in the NFC playoffs.
I know. And they did
nothing to prove.
They could have, Rodgers could have put up a couple touchdowns, even on that frozen night, but it would have when you end up shutting them out, which is a nice little bonus to shut him out in Lambeau, which that felt pretty good. And I don't care whether it was Rodgers or Hundley or Brett Bloody Favre or whoever playing quarterback. So it was.
It's not just Aaron Rodgers being gone that is the problem with the Packers. I think a lot of that Packer fan ire, like, well, if Rodgers played, we would have been a good team. Like, they're like a 10-6 team with Rodgers, with one of the all-time greats right now, because their roster is so putrid. Their offensive line is David Bakhtiari and some bad dudes, and some dudes. Their defense is made of no linebackers, and they've refused to address it for the last 4 years. They've got some talent on the defensive line. They have no interest in retaining any members of their secondary. They let Casey Hayward and Micah Hyde, 2 Pro Bowlers, they let them go, even though they had a chance to sign them on for cheap. It'd be like if the Vikings were just like, no, we don't need Xavier Rhodes. They're a complete catastrophe of a roster.
Yeah.
And Aaron Rodgers was just masking a bunch of it. So I don't want to hear any of this. If Aaron Rodgers played, oh, they would have kicked the Vikings. No, they wouldn't have. Their team sucks.
That's the adage is always, when you have a superstar quarterback, when he goes down, it really exposes how bad your team is or what your team's flaws are. And I've been...
Turns out their flaws are everyone.
Pretty much. And about every week on the show, I talk about how I interact with Packers fans in my day-to-day, and one of them has been kind of contributing to the site as of late. I posted a interview with a Packers fan before the game, like on Thursday or Friday of last week, and I know he's going to be contributing some more NFC North stuff here in the future, but his basic point, I asked him if he felt like McCarthy was on the hot seat, and he didn't seem to think so, at least from a fan perspective. He said a lot of it's just Ted Thompson. And obviously, when you don't believe in bringing in free agents pretty much at all, that's kind of an odd way to build a team in 2017. But I don't really, they're not a Super Bowl caliber team, by any stretch of the imagination. But you're going to get Packers fans who talk smack regardless if the Vikings do end up winning the Super Bowl, and they're justification for it being, well, Rodgers was hurt for the next 50 years or whatever.
Cry me a river about your injured quarterbacks.
I don't think that would have really mattered. But the good thing was, and Joe mentioned this in his write-up of the game also, was that the Skull chant was going down in Lambeau, which was amazing.
That was awesome. Just because of how many years have we heard go back, go back, so many times, time after time. And all those saintly Packer fans who would never, ever, ever sell their tickets and turn their back on their team, they were selling them in droves to Vikings fans who just had a little victory lap out in Lambeau. And it felt so good for Case Keenum coming in. He was doing the Skull chant as he left with him. How great was that? It's awesome.
I went to a game at TCF Bank Stadium the second year where me and my dad went, and it got to the point where it was the Packers game that we got just completely destroyed. And it was so obnoxious that I think it was the beginning of the third quarter we basically had to leave because there were so many Packers fans, and the guy right behind us kept leaning forward and doing the Go Pack Go thing. And my dad, who wouldn't scream fire if there was a fire, turned around and basically had to tell the guy, like, nothing's happening. Like, there's no reason for you to be celebrating. It's a TV timeout and you're on offense. Like, you shouldn't be cheering. And so the guy picked up on that and just kept doing it. So we basically had to leave. So there was extra validation there watching that happen for me, just because I have that vivid memory of the obnoxious Packers fans who have done that here.
But like Luke said, though, what a dull game.
Yeah, it really it wasn't entertaining at all. It seemed like, before we get into the game itself, since this is a talker and Luke wrote about this also, and it would completely, it won't happen, but it would be on par with us winning a Super Bowl. Speaking of Sue Hand looking for a topic, Luke wrote an article about the fact that some teams in the league, I don't know if they've been identified or not, were complaining that the Packers put Rodgers back on IR without a new injury, which apparently the rule is if you do that, you have to release that player. And so
yes, the rule is weird. So
it was nice to see you right about the rule. I like that. that was good to see.
Yeah, so that's not the rule. The rule isn't like if you improperly put someone IR, you get that would be akin to like if there's pass interference in the end zone, you just award them the touchdown. Like that doesn't make a lot of sense to just assume that's what would have happened instead. But essentially, there are two categories of injured reserve, and like the point of injured reserve is so that when you have hurt players, you can keep their rights while they heal, and in the meantime, sign someone to replace them. So there's two different categories of that. There's minor and major IR. So on major IR is what we usually see. That's Carson Wentz. That's what Nick Easton just went on. That's what Sam Bradford went on earlier in the year. That's you saying, okay, we think this injury is going to take more than 6 months or more than 6 weeks to heal. And so we're going to shut him down for a long time while he does his rehab, and then he can, you can take 2 people off of that, and that's the IR that we're all familiar with. Then there's minor IR, which is used a lot less for if you want to try to hang on to a player's rights while they heal from an injury, and then if they heal from that injury, come off minor IR, you have a better chance to like sign them back. That if nobody else wants them, it's essentially putting them on waivers and then like keeping them involved in the team so that you can bring them back when they get healthy if nobody else wanted them. That's what the Vikings did with Bucky Hodges this year. They put him on the minor designation of IR. He had a concussion. He healed from that concussion, was waived with a settlement, and then ended up signing with, I believe, the Carolina Panthers for a little while.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So did he get another one? Did he get another concussion? That's upset. Go ahead.
I don't remember. So that's the difference between the two designations. So where it gets weird with Aaron Rodgers is you can't put him back on major IR if you just took him off major IR, because it creates like a paradoxical situation, right? If you took him off IR, that's essentially a declaration that he's healthy enough to play football. And he played one game. Mike McCarthy in his press conference said he didn't suffer any setbacks and he didn't really have any new injuries. So he kind of testified himself into a corner and then put him back on IR, meaning, okay, so he isn't healthy enough. So either he's healthy enough to play and you put him on IR improperly, or he wasn't and you took him off IR improperly. So what the teams wanted was for them to say, well, maybe it's minor IR and put Aaron Rodgers on minor IR, which he would be released at the end of, and there would be a 3-week period where all the other teams get a chance to negotiate with Aaron Rodgers, and I believe he would be exposed to waivers because it's after the trade deadline. But there'd be 3 weeks of cushion before he can go back and re-sign with the Packers. So that would be when, if he goes to waivers and the Browns would have a chance to sign him. That would be the thing that would cause Aaron Rodgers to be released. But that would be a really weird punishment because instead of saying, oh, you improperly put a player on IR, okay, we're going to sanction you with draft picks or fines or whatever, that would make a lot more sense than, oh, we're going to put him on minor IR, which we don't think you were going to do, but we're going to do it anyway specifically because we know it'll make you lose Aaron Rodgers. That doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not really the NFL style, and in my opinion, would be kind of an unfairly targeted punishment. As much as I would love to see Aaron Rodgers leave the Packers, it would just be like really weird. It wouldn't be they would be doing a non-punitive action, which is changing the IR designation that they know has a punitive result. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. I think you're going to see him lose a 4th-round draft pick or something like that because they improperly abused IR, which is
what would be so great about
the rules, they get a sanction.
What would be so great about Aaron Rodgers leaving the Packers? He'd just go to the freaking Patriots. Brady could retire, and then they'd have 4 more freaking Super Bowls.
Well, the Browns would get first right of refusal.
That's what I was
going to get waivers.
Oh, okay.
So he would be a Cleveland Brown.
That was my understanding, is that the Browns have the waiver, priority, and that.
Or he'd end up on like the Bills, and we'd get Rodgers versus Brady twice a year.
Do you think he would? I mean, this is all theoretical, but I mean, do you think he would even do that, or do you think he would retire?
He wouldn't retire. He's still got many years left. I mean, it depends on how loyal he feels to the Packers organization. But I don't know if the Browns are offering him $5 million more a year than he's making now. Wouldn't you? I don't think this is ever going to happen, though. I think
he's basically playing for the Browns anyway.
Yeah, the Browns have a better roster position by position. They just have way worse coaching.
This kind of thing, Luke, is that coaches and Belichick, chief among them, have tried to use the IR and the injury report and all this baloney for years to try to, hide players and do this. And I think all these rules are in place just to figure out a way to keep them from doing that. And this is just, I don't know if the Packers were being sneaky or they're being dumb or what, but
I think they were being dumb. I think they just thought it was a routine thing in a dead season and they didn't think it through. Yeah, it's to stop teams from abusing injured reserve to expand the 53-man roster limit. Right. And the only other thing I want to say on this is a lot of the retorts I've seen. Every article about this that was written basically said, well, it probably won't happen because the NFL wouldn't force, Aaron Rodgers and the beloved Packers because they're one of the premier franchises. Which I super balk at that point because they said the exact same thing about Brady during Deflategate. They said the same thing about the feel good Katrina Saints after Bountygate. All of these kind of similar scandals or things that would happen, they said, oh, well, the NFL won't enforce it because those are the golden boys. And that's not really true. Of all of the times that we've seen a team commit an infraction like this, the NFL has enforced it inconsistently and stuff, and that's its whole a different issue. But they haven't shown favoritism. I think people see a lot of favoritism in officiating, but I don't really believe that that's true either. I think people are just
I don't think whiny. They want that connotation out there that they do have favorites, and I think that they react reactively instead of proactively on a lot of stuff.
They probably overcorrect for it, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that obviously they don't want people to think that they have teams that they let slide or whatever. That's bad for competition or the appearance of competition.
Right, they care all about the appearance of it, and this is now it's in the national spotlight. The New York Times did an article, Washington Post did an article,
PTSD did an article.
Yeah, this is a thing that's in the national spotlight, and the next time the NFL says we're investigating the whatever, or when a sanction drops, it'll be a big deal. So the NFL has eyes on this, and they'll have to play it the way they usually play it to have the best PR. And I think that's just all right, take a 5th round draft pick and say we handled it.
Ooh, I like it, though.
Yeah, it was fun to think about for a hot second.
It would be hilarious. Would love to see the Packers be bad for 15 years.
Oh,
they're due. We can all agree on that. I mean, me and Luke, our entire lives, well, not so much mine, but yours.
Yeah, I was born the year they got Favre.
There you go. I mean, it's got to end at some point.
There were some good old days in the 70s when they weren't so good. I don't think Hundley is terrible. Am I alone in that? He's not Rodgers, but
he's pretty bad. I mean, he's not the worst quarterback in the league, but he's got really bad pocket presence. He can't throw a pass past 15 yards. He's super skittish and runs into too many sacks. He was way better in the pocket in this last game than he has been all year.
And my kind of flyby interpretation of it is that it seemed like both quarterbacks struggled with the temperature on Saturday.
Absolutely.
Which is probably not the best thing when you play in Lambeau.
Yeah.
The game
when that's your home field advantage.
Totally. And that's been eroding over the years. I know when Favre was there, and he didn't like playing in the cold either. But they were basically unbeatable after a certain week of the season, or especially in the playoffs. I read an article I wanted to get a take on, since this segues into the game itself. Anyway, that I found kind of interesting, and it wasn't on the agenda, so I apologize, but it popped in my head. The title was, "This Picture is What's Wrong with Today's NFL," and it was that guy, that fan at Lambeau that wears the Lambeau on his head that has all the icicles hanging down.
Oh, that guy couldn't.
Don't get me started.
This is what's wrong with it?
Well, I thought they were saying crazy fans were what was wrong with it, so I wanted to I read it because I wanted to include it on this. But basically, their point was that having stadiums where it's not basically, there's no consistency from stadium to stadium, because some stadiums are freezing cold and other ones are
that's a bizarre take.
Yeah, and it was a New York Times one or something, and it was saying that a team that Philadelphia that plays outside in the playoffs has a unfair advantage. That always took me back to
the NFL is a problem because their product is frequently bad. I mean, did you watch the Eagles-Raiders game? That was a bad entertainment product.
Terrible.
That's why the NFL loses ratings. It's product is bad all the time.
Have they ever heard of baseball, where each ballpark has its own dimensions and its own eccentricities and its own different things? I mean, they used to say that the grounds crew in Detroit would build up a little mound in front of the home plate or the pitcher's mound or something to cause an advantage that they knew about. You know, there's all kinds of stuff like that, and it's fine. You're going to get me going if they have a problem with, you know, playing outside in some stadiums in the winter. Football's supposed to be like that, and I grew up in all that. Vikings at the Met, and that, you know, they're probably moving away from it to a certain degree as more and more teams certainly the northern teams get indoor stadiums, and I get that, but that stuff, that Buffalo game a couple weeks ago and all the snow, my God, was that a blast to watch, you know? So don't tell me this. I don't know if that's what the story's meant to do, Joe, but
no, it was. It basically was that.
Wow.
You know, and I think part of it was that from a fan perspective, it's not fun to sit in the cold, but some of my fonder memories of going to games were at TCF when it was, you know, the Giants game I went to, it was like 30 below. It was pretty cool.
And I thought when you brought up that guy with the icicles down, while that's a cool thing, whatever he wears, I thought you were going to go off on a different tangent and say there's people that wear cheese on their head and cowboy hat cheese, and I have to sit behind them. I don't know how I could keep myself from not smacking it off their head.
Yeah.
And that's what drives me nuts. I know that's not your topic you brought up here, but man, oh man, there's nothing worse than that, you know.
That's what I thought it was like, okay, what if you have to sit behind these people or just be around them in general? You know, they're kind of obstructing the view and they're obnoxious. But yeah, it just seemed kind of odd.
That is odd.
To take that, you know. But like Lou said, the NFL has. I think people are trying to rationalize why the NFL has lost a certain amount of viewership, and it has nothing to do with that.
And they haven't even really lost that much viewership.
People stop going to those games when they get old. I mean, I grew up. My dad had a partial season ticket. We lived in Mankato, and we would come up to them every year, and we would go up every season to our games, and we loved going up there and doing the whole tailgate thing outside and freezing cold temperatures, and you know, he only finally stopped going to them when, you know, he got older, and he said that, you know, he actually liked the Dome because he could, you know, go to more games. And, you know, when you get to that age, I'm not there yet, just by the way, so you know, Joe. I can understand it, but, you know, there's plenty of, if you raise your kids right, there's plenty of fans that can come up behind them that love going out there and just being in the elements. You see them, and they take their shirts off every week.
Well, that's not the whole thing. I don't think the guy, he might not live where it gets very cold because people take a lot of pride in that. Mm-hmm. You know, we want to, in Minneapolis, we take pride in the fact that we're basically, you die if you go outside for more than 10 minutes. You know, it's kind of a Scandinavian thing, and so that's why people take their shirts off, because it's basically like, this doesn't affect me, and that's what Bud Grant's teams did. They basically mentally intimidated the other teams by wearing short sleeves and saying, like, this is nothing.
Yeah, and
I do want to say...
Go ahead.
Sorry, I do want to say, before we move on from the game fully, that the offense had a lot of problems in this game, specifically in the run game. Like, Case Keenum was bad, but you can kind of forgive it because it was cold. Some people are saying Case Keenum was good, and that's very weird. Like, Case Keenum was bad, but it was cold, so that's fine, is a fine take. But some people were like, all right, Case Keenum lit up the Packers. Like, no, he was awful.
He did enough. He did enough to win, but he didn't do much.
Well, it's doing enough to win when the other team scored 0 points isn't really a bar that I want to even talk about.
That's right. I am not saying that. He did enough.
He threw some screen passes. Anybody can do that. He wasn't good in the game. He was asked to beat them deep and failed miserably at it. But the run game is what I'm a lot more worried about, because that was a pretty putrid effort once Easton left the game. Jeremiah Searles got beat on like every play. Latavius Murray clearly could not improvise when the plays weren't going the way they were designed to go. They called a lot of runs right behind the A-gap of Searles and Elfline, and that's very weird because he's like the worst dude on the field.
Yeah, but the the turf was trash too.
The turf was trash. That did cause a whole bunch of issues. But it was less about slipping and sliding or anything like that. It was more that the defense was able to get a lot more penetration than I'm comfortable with heading into the playoffs. So if we do have to play, I mean, we did lose Easton for the year on that. He fractured his ankle and he's gone for the year. So if Searles is going to be the left guard, we need to maybe not leverage him, like put so much weight on his shoulders. We should probably try to design the game around the players that are playing well, like Berger and Remmers, and Reef if we can keep him healthy. And also, like, come on, we need to use Jerick McKinnon. Holy crap. It's so clear that he has better vision as a runner, better burst as a runner, and better change of direction and suddenness as a runner. Latavius Murray is just there to take punishment, and it's just so clear that Jerick McKinnon can make more out of plays that don't go properly. He's the only one. He bounces things outside and changes gaps when gaps are there, and Latavius Murray just doesn't do that.
Yeah, I'll agree, but I like Murray up the middle more than I do like McKinnon. McKinnon is easily tackled sometimes up the middle, and he just can't move somebody or knock somebody over when he's rushing. So, yeah, kick it outside. I love to see that stuff. I still say you got to have them both in there. I don't think you favor one or the other, but just keep the pace.
Well, right now they are favoring Murray. They're giving Murray way more carries than Jerick McKinnon, and I think that's incorrect. At least to make it even. And Murray does have some runs where he'll bust through a couple arm tackles and have a nice run through contact. And Jerick McKinnon doesn't do that often. But I'd much rather have a guy make you miss the tackle by using good angles and using change of direction and suddenness than have a guy that can every once in a while run through an arm tackle that they don't make any effort to make you miss.
2 games ago, though, I mean, now granted it was a terrible defense, but Jerick McKinnon was all over the place. I mean, he got 100 yards, 114 yards receiving, and I think
and then they shut him down. I don't get it.
I don't know what must, maybe it wasn't a good passing night. I don't know, in Lambeau. There was a little wind up there, and it was cold.
Yeah, I was going to ask what you guys, it seemed like they kept going for the long ball, which was driving me crazy, because it was like, why give up, it's not working, why give up that down, just go for the short, whatever, just stop airing it out. What was the problem that you guys think with the disconnect there?
I thought they were trying to get the Packers down early as best they could and wipe out their spirit, and then you can just grind it out the rest of the way, but it never materialized. I think they wanted to probably do a little bit of what they saw in Cincinnati last week, get the team down and get their spirit down and get Teddy Bridgewater in there or something. I don't know. It was weird to see them do that often, but probably wasn't the night for it.
I think the defense sucked up a lot. I think they were doing a lot of making a lot of concessions to stop that short game because they knew it was going to be a bad passing night. So the Vikings took some contested balls that were available. Also, the deep shots. There's one. It's one thing if they said, okay, we're going to go into this game, we're going to take a lot of deep shots, but the deep shots were always open, which makes me think that maybe those are only throw it if they're open routes, kind of maybe second reads, look and see if you got it. And they were open every time. Case Keenum was just underthrowing and missing. And so I don't know if we can really fault the play calling because those plays were there, it's just the throws weren't there. And to stop doing it would require Case Keenum to basically say, okay, I can't throw these. And that's a tough thing to ask of a quarterback mentally, to just not believe in himself throwing a certain ball. So I don't mind taking the shots. Wish he could hit them, but I think that's what was there.
And he has, I guess, through the course of the season, so I can understand why he would keep going. And he seemed to play better as the game progressed. Obviously the cold weather, like we talked about, affected the game. We gotta kind of be happy with the Carson Wentz situation because going into Philadelphia in the playoffs, considering what we saw on Saturday night,
that's going to be a much different cold too. That won't be 0 degrees. I mean, it could be, but it's much less likely to be that biting Midwestern cold. That East Coast cold is cold, but it's not like ice bowl, frozen tundra, the ground hurts kind of cold.
I just don't know that game will be played in Philadelphia. I'm not convinced yet.
Me either.
Yeah. Well, that was my point, was that we're basically probably going to be playing indoors the entire playoffs. But that
perhaps only takes one game, and they could, the Saints or whoever could blow it. But I doubt they will.
Vikings have to go on a 4-game winning streak starting on Sunday.
Yeah, and how much? I mean, Luke touched on this, obviously. I was talking to my buddy before the game, and I said I want to get out of these games without any injuries, especially considering we've been, like Luke said, we're significantly more healthy than other teams. And I think, Joe, you said in your write-up that the Easton thing was survivable, but it kind of sucked, basically. I'm paraphrasing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, because I think they have a couple, this year they have a couple guys behind them. I know Luke is not too high on cereals, but hopefully he's got a bum knee that he's nursing and hopefully gets a little bit better, but they have the rookie behind him, so I think it's survivable, and I agree with Luke. You should game plan around him, go to the other guys who are playing well. It's just a shame that it happened. They get their starting offensive line back together for 12 plays or something like that, and then he's done for the season. That was a blow. Because that's been as far as I'm concerned, that's been the cog that's gotten this team where it is right now, is that offensive line, and I'm just hoping they'd all get back and get healthy for the playoffs. But nobody's, they'll tell you week in and week out at this time of year, nobody's really healthy. Totally. They're all limping or sore or this or that. And it's just a matter of overcoming it. And I believe at least there's some depth there that they can do it. Maybe there's some things that can move around. I saw Storm Norton in the locker room today, and he's a big lad. I have no idea what he has to offer, but he's got to have bodies in there to do it. And I trust Pat Sherman to figure out how to get past it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Also, we're 45 minutes into the show. We didn't talk about Harrison Smith.
Who?
Harrison Smith, your Pro Bowl snub.
Is he any good?
He might be. God, 2 picks. He was just all over the field all night. One of the best PFF grades since one of only 15 people to get a perfect 99 PFF grade since 2006.
What a response to the Pro Bowl snub, to have a national game and show people how they screwed up. It could have been a different game if he didn't get that first interception. I mean, they were driving. I don't think they were were they in the red zone for the first pick or close to it?
Yeah, well, that's where close or something.
Where he picked it. And he said it, though. He said either before the game, and one of the announcers repeated it. He says, I've made it when I probably shouldn't have, and sometimes you don't make it when you should. And that's the Pro Bowl in a nutshell right there. I mean, he's getting more and more, it was national exposure, of how good he really is, and it was wonderful. I don't think he cares. They certainly don't care. They just want to win the Super Bowl. So, but yeah, you're right. It was great. It was fun to watch. He took that game over, and he's always done well over there. He was the first person that's ever, or last. He has some stat intercepting either Rodgers or Favre at Lambeau Field. It's one of the last people to do it or whatever. So,
I think he was Favre's last Lambeau interception. I think I remember that.
Yeah. So he always plays well over there and gets fired up, and he showed it that night. The fact that they didn't score, it was just wonderful. It's got to be eating up Rodgers inside as he's sitting there watching it.
It's gotta hurt to have that happen to you on Christmas in your own house and then get it taken home in school chants.
It was the first one since '71 against the Packers, I think.
First one of the Vikings since '93.
As a team, I think, but against the Packers, I think it was '71.
Wow.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
I think that game was like 3-0. I think that was the one shutout that Vikings had. I think it was 3-0.
Old school.
Yeah, it was a December game at the Met.
Yes.
A weird cold weather contest.
A lot of 6-3, 3-0 games back in the day.
Yeah, defensive coordinator like Zimmer could appreciate. Nobody else.
Well, before we
got a lot of work to do though.
Before we get to the Bears game, which will be a big game just to see how the offensive line works before we, hopefully get into the first round bye. One last talker we had was the return of Sam Bradford from the IR, which Luke delved into a little bit earlier. Some of the conversation that I've seen online has been, what do you do with the depth chart, the QB depth chart? Do you put Teddy as the backup and Bradford as third? Or I've seen some people say, which is completely ridiculous, cut Teddy and put Bradford on. Before you guys hop into it, I'll just say that I think my point of view on this, and I'm obviously very biased as a pro Bradford guy, would be to put Bradford as the backup solely because he's played in Shermer's system before, and Teddy hasn't, and he's obviously had some success there against the Saints. So if Keenum does get injured, you have a quarterback that can come in that's a little more familiar with the playbook and the players around him. But Luke, I know that's kind of a different. We have a differing point of view in regards to that situation. At least we have.
I don't think so. I guess I don't know why it suddenly became a foreign concept to have them play in practice and start the best one and have them compete. I don't know why. Like, it's usually the default option when you have a quarterback controversy. All right, have them compete. See who plays better. I think it's the same thing here. It'll probably be Keenum through the playoffs. Just I think
you'd like to see Keenum potentially lose the job here through the playoffs. Is that what you're saying?
Me?
Either one of them. Yeah.
No, I'm just saying I want Bradford as the default backup, just in case.
You're right. I mean, Luke is saying.
I don't think that would even. I don't think that would ever happen. Unless he, melts down and throws, has a 5 interception game or something stupid. But that's true of every quarterback. He's the guy for now. But I think if you want to talk about, like, should Keenum go down, who you put in?
Yeah, that's
whoever's been practicing better.
Yes. If you're talking about
practicing for longer, but Bradford had training camp. I don't know.
If you're talking about the competition between Teddy and Bradford, I'm fine with it. But there's no replacing Keenum at this point. You not only, your team kind of looks at you and say, what? Because they know what they've gotten from him all year and what he's done and the chemistry they've built up. And then they have to, all of a sudden, this is the new thing, and they don't have any time with them. They have to answer questions about and on and on and on and on. But if you want to compete between Teddy and Bradford, I'm fine with it.
And that's what I meant. Maybe I didn't pose the question the right way, but I think. Yeah, it was more of a Teddy versus Sam thing, and some people are saying to just cut Teddy outright, which makes zero sense. But
they don't want to get rid of Slaughter either, and I'm just wondering, you can't have. I don't know that you can have 4 quarterbacks on your playoff roster.
Sure you can cut Stacy Coley. Who cares?
Ooh.
Yeah, but Zimmer has said he thinks he's going to be a player in the league. They don't want to just do that. I don't, because I don't know. It's really going to be interesting to see what they do going forward.
Because it could be really telling as to what happens next year with the quarterbacks too.
Yes, Zimmer was already couching it at his interview today. He said, he's going to practice next week. Whether or not he plays, is going to be ready to help us in the playoffs. He says, I don't know. And that's Zimmer speak for, I'm not counting on that. He's looking at Teddy, he's looking at Slaughter, and so that's what I think will happen, just reading the tea leaves between the lines. And if that's the best decision, fine. I don't know that. I like the idea of competition, but I know you can't have 4 quarterbacks in your playoff roster. I just don't. If maybe this is such a unique situation at quarterback, you have to do something like that. But then it's going to cost you somebody else. Maybe what's his name, Storm Norton. Before I give Foley.
Yeah, but, whatever happened to that guy?
Anyway, it's really funky. It's an interesting thing, and Joe, just to bring up something that you had on the agenda about the long snapper, that's gonna have an interesting effect on what goes on here. They've signed, I can't remember the guy's name. They signed a new long snapper, and he's gonna play this week. But we were talking with Kevin McDermott today. It's his left shoulder, which isn't a snapping shoulder. He said that he's hoping that they can, win this game. He can get a couple weeks off, and he can get back for the playoffs. And that's what he's looking for, and I'm sure that's what the team's looking for too. I'm sure they'd like to get him back, but it's going to be tough if they know you got a left shoulder injury. They can hammer on you as well. So it's going to be an interesting thing just to watch, and I think it will have an effect on how things go going forward.
Yeah, big time. I mean, it seems to me, being the paranoid member of this show, that the season could come down to a kick, whether it be a field goal or an extra point, and screwing up the chemistry that unit has, that the three people with the long snapper, the holder, and obviously Forbat, the kicker, is something you don't want to do, especially considering the struggles that Forbat has had, or I guess to be fair, that unit has had. And so yeah, it's kind of, it was a good thing that they beat the Packers and they swept the season series and they shut them out and all that, but there was obviously some scary stuff coming out of that game too that could have a drastic effect on how the playoffs go, which sucks.
So what do you do if, say, the team gets up big, there's some defensive touchdowns or some stuff by halftime, you're up 30 by halftime, and you want to sit Keenum and get a look at Bradford, and then Bradford lights it up even more. Then what do you do?
You put him on IR, 55 and then he ends up getting picked up by the Browns. I don't know.
That's the precedent.
He's a good guy. Why would they do that to him?
I love Bradford. I think, and I thought before the season started that he was the franchise moving forward, but with the contract situation going into next season, I really don't think that if it comes down to Teddy versus Sam, that they wouldn't go with Teddy just based on Bradford's age and the uncertainty with his injuries, throughout his entire career.
It's been called degenerative, and that's not a good word.
Totally. That especially with the knee that's had 2 surgeries on it. So I can't foresee any sort of. I do think that he would make more sense as the backup, just because he has played more recently and he has had a lot of success playing with Shermer's system and everything. But I don't think that he'll be the quarterback next year, or he'll be on the team in any scenario. So I think that they might put him in against the Bears just so he has some game time experience for the playoffs, and they'll rely on him as a backup in the playoffs just in case Keenum gets hurt. But
who's that? Sam? Teddy?
Sam.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they won't put him in this week. I don't think he's eligible to come off IR.
Okay, so then he'll be the backup.
Bradford? I thought he was practicing this week.
So did I.
Or is it for the playoffs? He's
not practicing this week. He will practice next week, is what Zimmer said today.
Okay, I thought, my memory of when he went down was he wouldn't be back till the playoffs, but just in skimming articles today, I got the impression that he might be available this week. But no, I mean, my theory is that you keep him for the playoffs as a safeguard, but then after that you cut him loose and keep Teddy based on what we talked about last week with maybe Teddy not taking.
I agree with that.
Yeah. Age and longevity. He can only have so many years left in this league with the way that he is.
And who knows? He could get back in and play like he did against the Bears the first time, and then Teddy ends up playing anyway. So who knows?
We might be. I should wait till this game is over and another playoff game I should say a playoff game is under our belt. But I'm getting real close to believe that Case Keenum is going to be the starting quarterback here next year.
Yeah.
And if we make some deep playoff run, I could absolutely see that. I still think it's very plausible, just the way that the cap situation is going to work out and the way that Spot Track and other similar services have estimated the contracts that both Teddy and Case will demand. It is definitely possible to have a Case Keenum, Teddy Bridgewater quarterback competition in training camp of 2018, which would be really fun.
Do you recall any of those numbers off the top of your head? Because I know that some of the commentators in national games, I think it was the Ravens game where they were talking about the discrepancy between Flacco's contract and Keenum's contract, and they were basically saying that Keenum's playing like he's going to end up with some sort of variation of a max contract next year.
Oh, I don't think. The national guys who have watched maybe one Vikings game don't understand what that, it's very clear to even an amateur football evaluator that Case Keenum is not an elite quarterback, even though he is putting up elite. Like that, there's a disconnect between Case Keenum's stats and his actual traits and skills and tape. Like there's a very clear disconnect, and we can argue about how big that disconnect is and how good he actually is and stuff like that. I think in situations like this before, where a journeyman has like a surge year, it's turned out to be a Glennon-ish contract of 14, 15, 16 million. Maybe the cap's bigger, maybe it's more like 17 or 18. And it's a 1-2 year, can you sustain this success sort of prove it deal. And with Teddy, who, really has only taken a couple snaps, looked still pretty, not unhealthy, but he looked very raw and rusty. I don't think he would be able to command like suddenly a 20 million, over like 20 million a year for 5 years kind of contract. So you can really, for probably more than you'd want to be spending on the quarterback position, but it's the quarterback position, and for something like 25 million or something like that for this next year, you could probably pay both of them. And the way the cap is structured, the way the Vikings cap is structured, you can do that and still be able to retain Diggs and Barr and Kendricks and Hunt and all those guys. We have a lot of cap room. We have a lot to do with it, but it appears that unless we get super snookered by somebody's agent and end up having to overpay somebody way bad, which I don't foresee happening, that it'll all be possible. Like, we can really retain all the guys we want to retain.
And you mentioned last week, Luke, that the QB market is kind of, which is, to me, seems kind of rare, that there's going to be a lot of available guys next year in free agency.
Yeah, well, I don't know how good any of them are. They're all like Kirk Cousins and Josh McCown. Like, I don't know
I love Kirk Cousins.
Any of them are. Yeah, he's been good. I don't know how many of them are like franchise answers, but there's definitely a lot of names flying around. So everybody looking for a quarterback is going to be able to find one.
What do you think, Joe?
Of what?
Of keeping both Keenum and Teddy next year.
I think that's what it will be. I would like to see him play this weekend sometime. I would like to see Teddy play, the second half, which would really be nice, and really see what they got with him. And then I would jump on board the Keenum Teddy slaughter thing. I'd love to have Sam Bradford here, but when I hear the word degenerative, I'm not convinced that this is something that they can necessarily fix.
Especially somebody, you have personal experience with that.
I'm not convinced he's going to trend in the right direction. And so I think you have to get a capable quarterback, and you have to look at the future at the same time. It informs every decision that the personnel department makes, and the right decision would be him and Bridgewater, and bring up Slaughter behind if that, and look and see what you get in the draft. You have to always, I'm convinced you have to ABDQ, have to always be drafting quarterbacks. That's at least one of those draft picks should go that way to a certain degree. Now maybe the Vikings have got 3 or 4 on the roster already, don't have to, but none of them are going to be on the roster next year. They're not going to be under contract, so we'll see.
And going into the Bears game, what do you guys? I know it's looking a lot like the Packers game in regards to it doesn't mean a whole lot. It means a lot for the Vikings to lock up the second seed, but there's not going to be a lot of competition there. The Bears aren't playing that well. I don't know if John Fox is going to have a job or not, or if next season. That's part of it. But what do you want to see going into this game? Joe, you kind of touched on it with having Teddy play. I'm only asking that because I suddenly, and I kind of felt like this way before, but I definitely feel this way now after talking to you guys. I feel a lot less confident than I did in regards to the playoffs, just with the injury to Easton and what that means for the running game, and how that running game is kind of predicated or moved the offense and dictated the flow of the game this last few weeks or months, really. So through the lens of the playoffs, what do you want to see to kind of bolster or improve your confidence?
I'd like to see the running game do something this weekend against the Bears. They've got a pretty good defense. They've got a good run defense. They've got a top 10 in yards, top 9 in point, or the 9th in points. defense. They played pretty decently there all year. Their offense is terrible, down in the 30 range. But so I would like to see them, really see what Searles has got. I mean, Searles is not terrible. I mean, last year, whoa, what? Somebody fall in?
What?
Did somebody fall right here?
No, that was my cat.
Oh.
We're a professional outfit here.
So I'm going to keep my eye on Searles and see how much we can rely on him. I would. It's a big deal. You're right, Joe. You got to get the running game going, and it's going to everything will come off that for this offense the rest of the way. I really trust in the defense. The defense is not only solid and tough and great, player of the week with Harrison Smith, but they are healthy. They've been healthy all year, and they continue to be healthy. And for me, that's the big concern. If you can stay healthy in the playoffs, and they're going to get a week to rest, I hope, knock on wood. I think they will. Yeah, no, that was me knocking on wood, just so they get it. And I am not afraid of anybody that's in the playoffs. I have concerns, but Vikings, like I said last week, they can beat anybody that's on the board. And Philadelphia is no longer a huge concern to me because they have been regressing. They had their first good game with Foles, and the next game, oh my goodness, he great. So I don't know. I'm not that concerned, Joe. Buck up, laddie. We're gonna be all right.
And this is the context isn't the best because of the situation with the offensive line last year, but I seem to remember Searles being one of the better guys in 2016. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe that's my Big Ten bias since he's technically a Big Ten guy coming from Nebraska.
It's a relative thing, though.
Totally. And so, I mean, I guess we can be grateful that they have this game, especially if or when they get the first round bye, for them to kind of see if Searles works out or if Isadora might be the better fit, and then they have the week to practice it. So I guess I need to calm down a little bit. I don't know. Luke, what do you think?
About the offensive line or just game in general?
Just like what you want to see from, the offense to kind of feel better about the team.
I want to see Keenum figure it out. This is the chance to do that. The Bears have a very good pass defense, but they're well out of contention. The end of this nightmarish season for them is on the horizon, and you're at home. In the last 4 games, he played not very well in the Packers game. He was hidden entirely in the Bengals game. He did a couple. He had a couple. He's always good for like 2 or 3 really good plays, but otherwise he's been, he's had a tiny depth of target. He's been, just swing passes and crossers and short, easy stuff. I want to see him return to the Keenum we saw kind of in November. The, scramble around, throw a big deep shot. That turkey hole Thanksgiving touchdown to Kyle Rudolph taking a shot. I want to see that guy return in this Week 17 game and get a little bit more momentum going. I want to see him pull it together because Atlanta, he was hidden entirely by game plan. Carolina, he had like 3 turnovers. Cincinnati, hidden entirely by game plan. And then this Lambeau game, he wasn't very good again. We got to snap that streak. We can't have him go into the playoffs cold. He was hot in November, he's been cold in December, and he needs to turn that around. That's what I want to see.
Mm. See, man, it's this kind of stuff that makes me nervous.
Joe, it doesn't even take that. They have a game coming this week. You're going to be nervous, aren't you?
I'm perpetually nervous regardless. But will I be any more nervous than usual? Yes, I would say I would be. I want to trend up, like Luke just kind of said.
Yeah. Also, I want to see the defense keep doing its thing. In the last 8 quarters, they have allowed 7 points. That's insane. I want them to keep it up, and I want to crush this stupid Bears team. The Bears are dumb, and I want them to lose bad.
You know how bad those guys must have been thinking about that shutout. I was disappointed there weren't a whole lot of defenders in the locker room when we were over there today, because just wanted to hear them crow a little bit about that. But even if they wouldn't have. But man, that was tasty.
So we're recording the show early. I didn't have a chance to see. Joe, did you put up your prediction yet?
I did.
So
maybe I'm this week.
You want to go first? This is going to be the last prediction of the season. I went big for the last week for the Packers out of necessity and panic, like a guy with his mortgage on the line in Las Vegas. I think I said 43.
I think you said 53-0. I don't have
okay.
Let me pull up the.
So I won then. Ugh.
This is. I just wanted to say, Joe, this is becoming my favorite segment of the show.
You know.
Yeah,
I think this is a good time to announce that next season's Purple Journal podcast, we will have someone else in Joe's spot. I don't care who.
No, we're going to have someone else in your spot. Didn't you know this contest was for your spot on the podcast?
That's right.
You know what? I'd take it. I would resign gracefully. The fact that I'm sending Joe another gnome is not going to lie. It's a crushing blow.
We're going to need off-season podcast ideas. So how about we splice together all these segments from all the shows, starting from the first one when Joe says that he considers himself pretty good at picking the Vikings. Can we do that? I'm sorry. Just being
There would be a definite change in tone from week to week. I think I realized it's fairly early that I've chosen the wrong industry to focus my time on.
No, I think Vikings get up early. I think they, the Packers are Packers. The Bears are not a slouch. They've been in we don't have anything to play for mode for several weeks now, so they know that we're playing for jobs, and they know that, so they're going to come and play hard. I don't think Trubisky has not improved statistic-wise since the game when he played the Vikings, when he had like 120 some yards passing, 12 of 25, I think, and he a touchdown and an interception, and it hasn't got much better than that. So I think the Vikings might have a chance at another shutout. Back-to-back shutouts would be hearkening back to the days of the Purple People Eaters if they did something like that. But I think the starters will get out of the game early, so you won't see it cut out, and they'll start serving people for the playoffs. And I think and Case Keenum's going to want to put something better out there than he did last week, and I think the Vikings are going to win this one 27-6 with a couple garbage field goals, or maybe a missed extra point by the Bears.
I'm thinking, it's impossible for me to make up ground, or to make up the ground that I'm down. I was thinking, I should really go for it with, a complete blowout, but I think at this point I'm in the mode of moral victories, and the moral victory here would be if I could win the last game of the season, so I'm just going to go with the regular prediction.
I like it.
'Cause I don't,
you're so far out of...
I think
what is the tally right now?
There's 117 points between you guys. We might just end the suffering.
117, did you say?
So, yes. With that in mind, I think the Vikings are going to win 118-0. No, I do think, I'm balancing, whether or not if they get up early but Keenum doesn't play well, whether or not they'll have Keenum continue to play to try to, play better in the second half and go into the off-season on a positive note. But I think I'm not too far off from what Joe said in regards to basically everything. So I think it's going to be a boring game. I think it'll probably end up being a little bit more low scoring than what Joe said. So I'm going with a 17-7.
What was this game last year? I mean, of course,
the final game of the season.
Yeah, last game of the season, and we kicked the crap out. It was 38-10 or something.
Yeah, and neither team had anything to play for, but the Vikings were at home, so they didn't want to. Yeah, and there was a lot of backups in the game, so.
Yeah, there was something to going 8-8 versus 7-9 in that game.
Yeah, the Vikings they want to play this one, and Carl Rudolph says, he goes, I come up here every week and I say a game is just a game. It's a win or it's a loss. He goes, this one's for 2 games. It's worth 2 games because we win this, we sit and watch next week, and it's it puts us into the next round. So they're going to be out there. They're going to be going for it this weekend, I do believe.
I don't think they're going to coast through this game at all. I just think Mike Zimmer has coach them better, and most of these players are coming back from 2016 where I think they coasted through the middle of the season and it burned them. So I don't think they're coasting at all. Obviously, I'm calling a win because the Bears suck and we're at home. I think this is going to be another game similar to the Bengals game where you're just up so much by halftime that you just start pulling people. I don't think that we're going to play Diggs and Thielen throughout the entire game. I think they're going to get pulled somewhere through. And for that reason, I'm going to call close. I'm going to say Treadwell gets his first touchdown in the NFL in this game.
Now, that's a bold prediction. Thielen's got a $250,000 incentives that he could reach on this game. And I can't remember what it was. I saw it earlier this week. So
if he gets 5 catches, he gets 5 catches, it would put him over 90, and that's the incentive.
There it is.
Also, can I just because I have the scores all lined up on this doc and I've got something really fun, the last 6 games for the Vikings defense, we let up 7 points to the Rams, 23 to who was that? 23 to the Lions. That was a tough game. 9 to the Falcons. Then we let the Panthers get 31 on us. So there's a couple bad games, and then 7-0. So 4 of the last 6 games, the other team didn't cross 10.
Wow.
Jeez.
That's a defense dominating.
It is. And just stay healthy, brothers. Stay healthy.
That's the key.
And that 31 by the Panthers is the worst game of the season for the defense.
Yeah, it's an anomaly.
That's the word I was looking for. Do they play? The Vikings play at noon?
Yes.
So
yes,
and all the other games when the Panthers played.
Everybody else plays after them. There will be no scoreboard watch, and they'll go out there and try to win it on their own. And that's what they want to do.
And in case people don't know what they should be rooting for after the game, if the Vikings win, nothing matters. We're the second seed no matter what. The Vikings somehow find a way to lose this game. Root for the Rams, the Saints, and the Falcons. Any one of those teams wins, and the Vikings get a bye even if they've lost to Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Anyone. Only need one of those 3. And those are 3 good teams to root for. So
well, there you go.
There's so many options for the Vikings to get this second seed. If they don't get it, it will be a Christmas miracle.
And it would be par for the course for the Vikings, but
it would be truly incredible. I think the odds makers out there, the 538s and the guys that kind of put together percentages based on the odds of everybody winning the game, has it at 99.5% or something like that the Vikings get a bye.
Wow.
I booked plane tickets for the playoff game. I'm confident.
Oh, you're coming back? Well, you're here now, but you're leaving and coming back?
I am. I'm in Minnesota right now for the holidays, but I am going to come back in a couple weeks for the divisional round playoff game.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm excited. Can't wait to see who we're going to play.
Yeah, we'll know next week. Tune in next week. It'll be a fun show. I'll probably be at peak nervousness at that point. I may burst into flames at some point during the show. So we'll see.
Then it won't be the Burr edition. It'll be the, I don't know.
Ember edition. Huh?
Oh, quick. He's quick.
I'm the quick one. But yeah, I wanted to thank everybody for listening. Wanted to remind everyone to check out VikingsTerritory.com. They have a lot of great coverage, and we're going to be going into overdrive for the playoffs. Hopefully our message board will be up by then so we can all collectively share our fears, nerves, and celebrations together. Follow us on social media on Facebook at purplePTSD, on Twitter at purplePTSD, and also follow at Vikings Territory there as well. But this has been the Purple Journal podcast. Thanks for listening, and Skol.